Hello, welcome to another edition of Move It or Lose It podcast, which will soon be MS Disrupted. So I am excited. I know I say this every time, but did an interview with patients with you, not with you yet, but I did with Patients Rising a while back and got your name, Isabel, and was very excited to do this because I have, as you know, if you're in the disabled world, we're a bit unseen. So I was very excited to interview Isabel, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of this because we're going to talk about all things disabled. So with no further ado, Isabel, we're going to say your name together because I'm not going to mess this up. So Isabel, let's say it together. Welcome to the show, Isabel Mavrides. You say it again, the way you say it beautifully.
Isabel Mavrides-Calderón.
Yes. Cannot say it. Tried 3 times. It was just so pretty. I knew I was going to mess it up. So Isabel, tell us about 16 years old.
17.
Okay. Don't want to miss that. But I am so impressed by the work you've done, all that you've gotten done. Tell us what it was like before you were diagnosed and what you were diagnosed with.
Before I was diagnosed, I think I was a child, really. I've spent my entire teenage life having a disability. So for me, I mean, I was super focused on violin. That was like my life. I was planning on becoming a professional. I was really like super duper serious about that. And then for me, I got diagnosed after I had a spinal cord injury doing gymnastics. And like so many people, there was supposed to be some progression. Like the doctors thought I was going to get better after a surgery, and I didn't. So that's when it made them look into things more. And I found out I had a genetic condition, which was really why I was able to become injured so drastically, so easily. And after that, I mean, I was young. I was 11 years old when this all happened. And for me, I didn't really have any idea of what it meant to be disabled. I, like so many people, I didn't really see disabled people in the media. My experience within my own educators around me, my parents, my teachers was, oh, like disabled people exist, make sure not to stare too long. And that was about it. So I had no idea what that meant. I wasn't even comfortable using that label for myself. So it was a journey. And I think until I was about like 13 years old, I didn't have any conceptualization of what that meant. And I think that changed when, like so many people, I was young, but I reached social media and I saw other disabled people there. I saw other people with my condition, and it made me look into it. And I also think around that age is when I first faced any semblance of accessibility in the classroom. My school did an amazing job of becoming more accessible for me, becoming more accommodating. And it's really because of seeing my mom advocated for me like crazy. To have some accessibility. And once I had that, I realized
moms are great, aren't they?
Moms are amazing, yes. I used to think that whenever I faced a barrier, it was default to my own body. It was default to myself. But when I did face some sort of accessibility within the classroom, I realized that when I have access and when I have accommodations, I can do almost anything. That my body really isn't a barrier, society was. And seeing
Very good point. That's a great point.
Seeing that made me question, why don't we just always have accessibility? Why don't I just always have accommodations? So I can go about life without my body being a barrier. And that's the question that made me start getting into activism.
Yeah, I love that because that really is how we're made to feel, right? That there's something wrong with us. Not only are we battling whatever rare, crazy diseases that we're battling, but also we just don't fit because there's no accommodations. And so it's like, well, we either have to figure it out on our own. There's something wrong with us, even beyond our disease. We just don't fit. And it makes us isolate more. So I love that you early on decided this doesn't make sense. There needs to be accommodations. So how did you, at what age? Now you're what, 11, 12, and you decided I'm going to advocate. What did that mean to you? How did you know what that meant and how to do it?
I didn't.
Because I'm thinking of my kids at that age. I mean, I knew my daughter wanted to be a missionary. So I know it's possible because she was like, I'm going to raise $17,000. And I was like, we don't have to worry because that's not possible. So she's not going to go to Peru. Well, I know it's possible with you guys because she raised it and she went to Peru. So I know when you have a passion, you will do it. So you had a passion, you knew you wanted to, but you had no idea how to do it. So what happened?
So for me, my vision of youth organizing really came from the climate movement, because there's so many young people involved in that. Unfortunately, we don't see that same level of on the ground organizing for disabled folk,
Yeah.
and for young disabled folk. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that organizing a protest is not always accessible.
Right.
Organizing on the ground it takes a huge toll on our bodies. So
Yeah.
we don't see that same level of organizing in our community because it's not always possible in an accessible way unless we make accommodations to it. So for me as a young person, I kind of saw this image from the youth climate movement, and I became friends with a lot of kids who were there organizing, and that kind of made me spark, how can I do this same, use the same like formula with the civil rights movement. So that's how my first major thing I got involved is I was the accessibility consultant for the Australian climate strike. I had just had a spinal surgery, so I was in the bed in a hospital, and I was on Skype, giving like instructions on what they can do, and I think that's how I first discovered how the process of organizing a protest happens, how the process of getting people together to make change happens. And from there, I kind of use my same connections. I mean, a lot of organizing is networking from other activists in New York City. I'm really lucky that I grew up in a place where activism is so
100%.
And I got them to they were more than willing to come together and help me organize a protest.
Do you think a lot of it had to do with your age? Do you think they were so excited to see your passion and your age that they were like, we will be there for you, we'll help you?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of solidarity within movements. I was working with, I think, the immigrant rights movement. I'm Latina, so this is also an issue that's really close to my heart. And I became super close to other kids that were, I mean, slightly older than me, but still relatively my age. And just building these connections within movements and within change. So I will help you make your protest accessible. I will help you organize your protest. But you're also going to come and help me. And I think that that's something that we saw in the early disability rights movement, the pioneer movement. The Black Panthers were part of that movement as well. They helped as well. So I think movement solidarity is really how I got started. It's how I learned. And it's how I was able to get people to come to my protest. It was how I was able to change. So that's really how I got started, just leaning on other people.
Right. No, I love that. I absolutely love it. And I see that a lot now too, even as my advocacy has grown, as my podcast has grown, and we'll touch on this because I know it's something you and I wanted to talk about after the pandemic, how that has shifted things. But when I really, this is about you, but just as my gym has shifted and I decided to kind of move away from that and really saw such a need because I had to be still, and watched such a need with our community and how we were getting so taken advantage of. And so I came to my husband and said, I have a deal for you. I'm going to make a third of my income because I want to do this. But he's a great man. And he just said, this is what you need to do. This is 100%. It's your passion. They need you. You have all of this knowledge. You've been multi-certified to do this. Go for it. They need you. And so I've been able to do it. And I love it. I love helping them. And it's just been so satisfying. There's nothing better. I've said this a million times than to get a phone call from someone that stood in the shower for the first time in 10 years. What's better than that? It just is. You just have to reprioritize what matters and being able to jump in and advocate for people that can't for themselves. And part of the big part of my heart doing this with you was because there's so many of my clients that I care so deeply for. And one of the big things that I know is a passion for you is the driving, the transportation. I mean, a lot of my clients are in California, and I'll get a call and they'll miss appointments. They'll get to their vans where they're in wheelchairs, and they'll get there and they'll wait in the heat for 2 hours. They'll get a call that they're supposed to be picked up and no one will be there. And I know it's a shortage of workers and they're late for their appointment. And then they get to their appointment. They can't be seen. They go back home, they wait another 2 hours, and then they're home, they're sick because they're overheated. They've had no water, no food. And then they have to do the same thing over again. Miss the appointment, from the van. So, I mean, I know we're jumping around, but what are your thoughts on that? And do you see that changing?
I mean, it's really funny that you asked this because there was just a bill that came through about transportation. Something I really focus on. I spent very little of my childhood in cars because I live in New York City. So I honestly personally don't have as much experience with that, but I have tons of experience with the public transportation system living in New York City. And in New York, only 20% of subways are accessible. So a lot of my focus has always been on public transportation because it's transportation that's meant to be for all of us.
Right.
So whether stuff is changing, I think that there's some seminoles of hope because a bill came through to make all public that's how it was advertised, to make all public transportation accessible by the year of 2050. Unfortunately, after I did some more reading into what this bill actually entails, it would only be 4 more subways becoming accessible in New York, which doesn't seem like that much. But I do have hope that this is a conversation that's happening. This is something that's getting attention because for so long we haven't seen any legislative change for disabled. Right. Just part of the conversation. And I really credit this change to the fact that this came through because of a disabled senator, Senator Amy Duckworth. And while I don't agree with her with absolutely everything, I do think the fact that we have a disabled person in politics is creating change. Almost all the change we've seen for disabled folk has been through disabled senators. And while I don't think this is always the case, so we have people who I think are disabled and created a lot of harm for the disabled community in politics. I do think having disabled people in positions of power is how we're going to see change happen.
100%.
So I have hope. I have hope that our voices are being heard, and I have hope that more of us are getting into these positions.
Yeah, definitely. I find that to be, it's funny because the more you get into it, the more you can't look away. You know, the more I'm being told, the more it's like, well, I mean, you have a platform, right? We each do. And for me, my platform is having the podcast, having the program that I do with the patients so that I can get more. Every patient has a story, right? Every patient has something. And I use this platform to get patients on and then get patient leaders, doctors, things like that are doing things like you're doing things in the community that cause change, and then helping to spread awareness, and then piggybacking on things like that. So we can then, again, I know the phrase has been used, but it's so true. If we don't do it together, it doesn't get done. If we were together, and that's why I loved having you as a guest, because it is crossing those generational lines. It's not always easy, but I love the fact that that we're able to do that. And I think unfortunately, the one thing that the other worlds don't do is in our disabled world, we more easily do that, where we look at each other like we have so much in common. I don't look at you like you're 16 and I'm a bit older. You know, I could be your older sister, but I look at you like you have so much to offer, and I want to hear what you have, because you got things to offer that I may not understand, and I may have things to offer that you may not, but together we get so much more done. And so I think of that even when I lead my support group with women, that I want to hear the newly diagnosed, and I want to hear what the diagnosed that have been diagnosed even longer than me, what do we have to bring to the table, and what wonderful ideas can be sparked and hope. And so the transportation stuff, when you see, I love that I agree 100%. The more senators, the more people we have in office that are disabled, we have more hope in that they are looking at that. So as you do some advocating and stuff, I'll go backwards now to some of the questions. What are some of the most difficult things you've faced since COVID, the pandemic, and the things that you got started? What are some of those big things that you faced?
I think during the pandemic, one of the very difficult things disabled people faced in general was this exhaustion from constantly having like the value of our lives diminished. Because we've seen this narrative of like, I don't want to wear a mask because it just kills disabled folk. And I think it's been really painful to see that coming from the people closest to us, from people who we thought were our friends, our family, that have that don't view our lives as worth living, that don't view our lives worth putting on a piece of cloth for.
Right.
So I think it's been exhausting. And I
Yeah.
think that so many other disabled people have felt that exhaustion, that on a wide scale, seeing
Right.
how the world values us.
Yeah.
So I think that has just been a lot. Our community has been through so much. So this has been the time where, like, I think my activism has grown the most.
Yeah.
My platform has grown the most as well. So while we've faced the most, also where
Yeah.
I think that we've been able to make the most change,
Yeah.
where we've had the most people come together. So it's definitely, it's been a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I think that it's been the most important. I think I've probably given the most encouraging things, the most love. I think that was a big reason in support and doing the support group, and kind of I wanted to do it, but it was like it needs to be done because there was such a depression and such a feeling of I am really not seen. Not only not seen, but because so many of us still have to wear the mask for so many reasons, depending on what medication we're on. I know for my medication, I still have to wear it. And I find it almost people are annoyed. Now all of a sudden they can't hear you. I'll have it on and it's like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm like, well, when we were all wearing it, you could hear me, but now all of a sudden they have no ability to hear. So it's like they're frustrated, almost look at you like, really? I'm like, well, you don't really know why I'm wearing it. Like, I'm not wearing it because I love it. And it's, I love the breakouts on my mouth and my face. It's like, we're wearing it obviously for a important reason. So it is, you feel very, very unseen and not cared about. So I agree with you 100%. So another question I had is I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that speaking, you talked about, which I really like how you worded this. You speak about not being a motivational speaker, but being a truth speaker. You say your content is not positive. You talk about it being the state of disability rights in our society. Tell me more about this, about it not being super motivational, which I get what you're saying, but for our guests, talk about what you mean when you say that.
I think so often young disabled people, young chronically ill people are kind of seen as these like pure, perfect angels that are just like so motivational and positive, and like we should think they're so inspirational because they're happy. And I think as a disability rights activist, it's been really hard to be taken seriously because so often I'm just used as this kind of prop to make people feel better about their lives. And I see this so often where people will hire me to speak at events, or they'll hire me to like come like speak at something, and I find that they just want me to talk about like my diagnosis and how hard it is for me, and not actually about the change that I want to see in society. Or corporations will hire me to like have my face on it to be like, oh, we're so inclusive, but they won't actually make their company accessible. So I think that kind of juxtaposition of like people wanting to seem accessible, people wanting to be inclusive, but actually making change is kind of what sparked this, the post where I said this. Also, there was an article that that called me a motivational speaker, and that's when I was. It was a really nice article, but it kind of made me look into myself. I'm like, am I a motivational speaker? It made me look to my content. I'm like, is my content positive? It's really not. When you look at it, all my videos are talking about the change we need to see in our world, because we're disabled folk. We have so many negative things going on right now. And so the post was really just kind of announcing to the world that like, if you want me to be here to be positive, if you want me to be here to make you feel better about yourself, that's not what I'm going to do.
Right. No, I love that. I think it's very honest. I think it's more important to get out the stuff that you do than that. I mean, I think that not being a motivational speaker doesn't mean that you're not there for someone. You're there actually pushing for their rights. And that's a much different thing than coming on with, and I think you said it perfectly. You're not there to be the face of a young disabled person, to be there and smiling, and you're there to actually push through and to actually see things make changes. So what of all the interviews you've done, I saw that you've done an interview for NBC and things like that. What are some of the interviews that you felt like you were able to have your voice heard and push through and got something like, yes, they heard me, and something got pushed through?
I think more than an interview, I think discussions are really
Yeah.
hard. I think that, like, for me, I think something that I think I've been able to push through the most is whenever I do a guest lecture at a university.
Yeah.
I do this a lot in Arizona State University, and I was
Okay.
with an education class for like special teachers that were learning how to be special education teachers. And I think that was one of the moments where I saw my impact most directly, because I think that I was able to speak to the people who are going to be dealing with disabled people in the future, the people who are going to have the most impact on disabled people's lives in the future.
Right.
So I think speaking of them was a moment that I felt a lot of responsibility, because I was like,
Right.
this is the future of the young people in our community. This is going to be the future me's, like the little disabled people who are going to be impacted by these people in this.
Right.
So I think I had a really interesting discussion with the students in that class, and they really got it. They all of them were there. I mean, it's a self-selecting group, but all of them were there because they wanted to make change for disabled people. So I think that's the place where I really felt like I was heard the most, and the place where I felt like, oh, they get it.
Yeah. I love that. So how often are you able to go, now that things are opening up more, are you able to go to universities and speak?
I've done it like only 3 times. I mean,
Wow.
I'm 17. I mean, I don't think every
Yeah.
university wants to hire like a teenager to go speak.
Well, you're getting older, so I think
Yes.
I could see you doing that a lot.
I hope so. I mean, I want to go into academia, so I
Yeah.
think that's something I want to do in the future. I think education
Okay.
is so powerful.
What do you want to teach? What is it that you want to,
Well,
is your major?
I want to I'm going to the college process now, so this is something I definitely think about a lot. I want to go into special education policy, so I want to things on a more wide scale.
Yeah.
Like how we can reform the system itself. But I definitely do, like, within that, I want to definitely like teach in special ed.
I'm so impressed by you. I'm just like, yeah, girl, get it. I love
Thank
it.
you.
I wanted to teach special ed as well. So you're near and dear to my heart. I did it all through high school. It was, I think I was asked like my sophomore year, and I just carried it through. And I was pregnant very early on. So I did not, I think I was at Michigan for a week, but that was what I wanted to do. And I always had such a heart for special ed. It was a big part of I was just very drawn to it. I loved working with special. I loved the honesty and how, they could tell like immediately if you were cared, didn't care. If you were having a bad day, I could say nothing. And they were like, what's the matter? I'm like, how can you tell? And it was just, I just enjoyed it immensely. And, you never know where life's going to take you. Who knew that later on I'd be here? So it's just, it's always interesting. I always believe nothing's by accident. Everything's for a reason. So I love that you're doing that. It is, I mean, from the second I started reading about you, I was so impressed. And let's talk a little bit about the opportunity that you've had to change perspectives in advocating. And so what you see yourself doing in the next 2 years, what do you see?
I think this whole idea of like, I mean, I don't really know. I see myself in college, hopefully. It's hard to know exactly where I'll be in 2 years. But I definitely see social media as something where I have a platform for change.
Yeah.
I think that when we like speak at universities, when we do these like more like prestigious events, I don't think that's when we as advocates make the most change. I think it's when we're speaking to the general population.
Yeah.
And I think social media gives us the opportunity to just speak to the everyday person. So while I might, at an event, I'm having people who care about disability rights already. In a TikTok, I might be reaching like 80,000 people who are like young people like me, or people who've never heard about disability rights before. So I think that I really hope to expand that. I really hope to reach more of the general population. And I really hope that like I can do more underground organizing now that things are open.
Yeah. So talk to us about underground organizing. So if somebody is popping on, they're listening, our listeners on the podcast, and like, underground, what does that mean? Talk to me about that.
I mean, like on the ground, like on the streets, like protests, events. I kind of see it as like these 2 separate categories: like social media, and like speaking online. And then the second category I see as like protests, events, sit-ins.
I love it.
Thing we think of when we think of that.
So then as far as, then I'm going to ask you another question. So for those people who don't understand how TikTok is useful for social media. Explain that. Tell them how you use TikTok.
So TikTok is really, I mean, I love to speak. I speak a lot. So TikTok is like a platform where you can make 60-second videos
Right.
and talk about whatever you want. And it has a lot of young people, but it has a lot of like everyone. It has huge demographics.
Like people my age even.
Yeah, of course. So it's really a space where you can like make a video and it gets out to whoever sees it.
Right.
So it's definitely been a place where I think my activism has had the biggest impact.
Yeah.
I've been able to use it to tell people like I'm having an event at the ACLU,
Right.
and then I'll have people come, or I'll say I have a petition I need you guys to sign, and then I'll have way more people signing it because I have this community of people seeing it. But it's also been a space where I've been able to make videos, not
Right.
necessarily to get people to go up and do something, but to change
Right.
hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And I think it's also powerful. I've been able to like talk about issues I care about, talk about disability history that you don't learn at schools.
Right.
I think that's the place where I honestly think I've made the biggest impact.
Yeah, I love that. I love that what you do, it's not just like, again, it's not motivational stuff. It's not fluffy stuff. What you do is with a punch and you make it very accurate. I love, so I'll have on the bottom of the show notes where they can find you on TikTok and all the other stuff. Because I think it's so crucial that I think a lot of older people, and I'm not speaking for myself, but see TikTok as this like, dance thing, funny thing, but it's really changed so much in a place where we can put out so much value and put so much meat in there that gives so much opportunity for them for young people for sure, but for a lot of other people who are turned on to it and say like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here. And I think too with for me, I know that I got really into Twitter this last year, and it was specifically, I got into it because I was searching for a specific doctor, and I got really into the conversations and found a lot of great, I got contact in Twitter that I normally, maybe wouldn't have got on. So I think it's just really being open to when, especially when you're advocating and you're doing stuff like for your business and doing things like that we're doing, it's important to look at the different platforms and see, what works for us. Some of it may not, and some of it, Facebook isn't my first go-to, but I know that there are still people on it that I still need to use it somewhat. But Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and stuff like that just seems to be where we reach the most. And so I think that's the most important. So as far as like what you see in the work that you do with patient advocacy and stuff with Patient Rising, how did you start with them and how did that work out for you?
So Patient Rising had been following me on social media for a while, and I think it was the beginning of the pandemic. It was my freshman year of high school, and I got a DM on Instagram from Patients Rising about Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, because I think this was when I started realizing that the movement is intersectional. So it's something I was talking about a lot, intersectionality within disability rights. So they contacted me to kind of audit their work, to be in this council, to try to make Patients Rising a more inclusive organization. And I'm really happy. This was like that I got involved with it. This was like one of the first nonprofits I really got involved with. And I'm happy it was, because it was such a positive experience and it showed me like what a positive working environment can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been very excited when I've been able to work with them a little bit, and they were so good about, I said, these are the things that I want to, look forward to. These are some of the podcasts I'm looking forward to, the questions I want. And immediately they took me right to you. And I'm so grateful for that. And the podcast, I think that what they're doing there is just really, I'm just very excited about it. And I was able to turn, even with, when I did the support group, I was able to say like, because there's so many questions, so many fears of, when patients can't work anymore. What do I do when I need to get on disability? And I'm like, well, I want you guys to look over here. Here's some podcasts I want you to listen to. I will be interviewing some soon, but for the meantime, here are some I want you to go to. I think there's just such a wealth of knowledge and so many great people there. So I love that you're involved in that. And what other things are you involved in besides that, besides Patients Rising and all the other stuff that you're involved in?
I think the bulk of my work I do with the ACLU. Because I think a lot of my activism it doesn't really focus on the medical side of disability. It focuses most on the like social civil rights side of disability rights. And that's why I think the ACLU is a great organization for that. Because while it's not disability specific, they have such a wide reach politically, legislatively, where I think I can make the most change. So I've held a lot of conferences with the ACLU, held a lot of like webinars and discussions, a lot of protests where I've organized alongside the ACLU. So that has definitely been a great thing for me. And I've also been able to focus on other civil rights issues, like when this whole Roe v. Wade thing came out, I was able to work on how we can make disability rights, how the intersection between disability rights and reproductive rights, and organizing protests on that end. So that's been probably the main organization I work with. I also work at a policy team of the Center for Disability Rights here in New York. So yeah, most of my work surrounds the civil rights side.
And what has been the biggest change you've been able to see with the civil rights changes in the last, like, let's say last year? What has been the biggest thing?
Honestly, there hasn't been a huge change, but I do think that like a lot of these issues where we have seen, I mean, honestly, most of the changes I've seen have been negatively. But I have seen like more people speaking out. I have seen more of an attempt, even just with the Build Back Better bill, there was an attempt to make more infrastructure for disabled folk. There's more and more bills coming out to make small changes here within New York City. I think a change I saw is that they're keeping remote options for schools. So that was huge. That was something I worked in with city council. So I think those like little changes here and there. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie and say there's been a huge positive change.
Right. And do you think a lot of that has to do with, like, right now we're still in like such an angry time where, I mean, it's just all over, right? I don't think I've ever seen a time where there's so much anger.
For sure. I think anger can be really powerful too. I think a lot of my activism stems from anger, if I'm being completely honest. A lot of how I got into this stemmed from anger. And I think anger, when used positively, when used to actually productively to make change, can be a catalyst. I do think anger can be unproductive if we just say, wow, everything sucks, let's just stop thinking. And I think it's not that way sometimes. But I do know we need to use this anger we feel right now as something to drive us to.
Agree. So what would you say right now, looking at your 17 years, what would you say your biggest triumph has been?
I think my biggest triumph has been like with like tangible change I can see has been New York City schools and remote accessibility. It's something I worked very closely. I testified a lot in city council to get this change to happen. I organized a lot of protests surrounding this, and actually seeing Kathy Duckworth dedicate money to disability rights, dedicate it to education, was this moment where I saw like, wow, like what I do actually is creating change. Now, millions of disabled New Yorkers are going to be able to see this different change.
And when did that happen?
Just this year.
I was going to say that is incredible. I mean, did you even turn 17 then, or were you 16? I
think I was 16 when this all happened.
I am so impressed by you. Everything you say, I'm just like, you did what? Like, and we talked a little bit before this, that I believe in my heart, my favorite thing with your generation is you don't wait. I love this generation because you see things that have not been done, that are not getting done, and you just go. And I just see you guys as the new generation that's like, this isn't getting done. This isn't getting done. Well, we're going to band together and we're going for it. We're just going to go get it done. And I asked you before we had some time to talk, do you see you guys that way? And what'd you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as a generation, we have, like you said, a lot of anger, and I think it's criticized in a lot by like older generations. Like, almost like too angry, like they don't realize how good they have it.
Right.
We do like appreciate the change that's been made, but it also catalyzes us to make more change.
Right. I just find it interesting because like you have the baby boomers who were like, you know, had it different. And then I think I'm Gen Z, I get them all messed up. And then you had the millennials, and then my son would be the Gen Y, Gen whatever. And then you're Gen,
Yeah. Gen
you're
Z.
Gen Z.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm Gen X. And then my 23 would be
a millennial in between millennial and Gen Z.
yeah. So I just find it so interesting because I see my youngest a little bit like you guys, but not as much. I see that generation being a little bit different than the millennials, in the sense that they saw that and they want to see more change. But then you guys are popping up like, oh no, you think you're seeing change, but we are going for it. So I just find it very interesting. I'm watching you guys like, oh yeah, they're going to make big change. So it's very exciting to see. So I'm just going to be following you, and I want to interview you again and see what you're doing again and again. And I really want to follow the transportation because I'm very interested in that. And that's been really on my heart as I listen to more and more clients, and just watching and just seeing them late for these appointments and the frustration when they get back, and teaching movement and having them come back so flustered and so not being able to concentrate because their day has been wrecked. They missed their appointment. They're nervous now. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And I know we have a shortage with employment everywhere, but it's just been really heartbreaking for me to watch that. And then it's like, I want to make a change. And I'm like, who do I go to? Who do I talk to? So yeah, we'll chat about that a little after. But I'm so grateful to have you on. And any advice that you have, if people are on here and they want to start, like, I want to help make a change, where would you send them to begin? I want to start helping. I want to link with her. I want to start helping to make some changes.
I mean, you could always contact me if you want more detailed information, but I think if like identifying what are the biggest issues you faced, and then seeing what are the laws behind that, what are the policies behind that. I think before making change, you have to be educated. So I think reading a ton. If you're going through the more policy route, reading the policies in your state, reading the policies in your nation that cause the issues you're facing, and then identifying what you want to change. So just knowing what you want in specific and knowing what the problem is in specific, I think is the place to start.
Yeah, agree. Wonderfully said, because that's the thing is some of us want to change everything, right? And we can't start by everything. Let's decide on what is the one thing that you really are, that really you're really passionate about. And then start, like you said, start educating yourself on that. And then get a tribe together. You know, get a tribe together that feels the same, that's going to help you and work with you, and then go for it, tackle it. Find the people that are on your side that have answers, and go for it and just go from there. And I am so appreciative of you, Isabel. I'm so happy that they got us connected. And I knew the second I started reading about you, I'm like, this girl's on fire. I'm like, she is getting stuff done. So I can't wait to hear what college you go to and what college you set on fire for what you're going to do for all of us. I thank you for your heart, for our disabled world, and your passion to not give up and to make changes is just absolutely amazing to me, that you have such a fire in you from such a young age. And I'm so appreciative for your mother that she just was like, you got this. And I love your heart. I love your passion to just move and not give up. And so I'm going to list. So your handle, give me your handle for Instagram.
Powerfully Isa. Everything is powerfully Isa.
And then as far as them finding you, I'll put it on the bottom of the show notes, but your TikTok is same?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll have that on the bottom of the show notes. But again, check out our TikTok, because it's not what you would think, but some really, really great stuff on there. So I would definitely invite you to check her out. And again, Isabel, it has been great to have you on. Check her stuff out on all of this stuff on TikTok, and all of the work that she's doing on all of her advocacy. And you got your stuff on UCLA, of course, and you've got your stuff on let's see, what else do you've got going on? And what's your next stuff that you're doing on Patience Rising? Anything new with that? You can also check out the stuff that Isabel's done on Patience Rising.
So Patience Rising, mainly, I'm just right now going through their masterclass on how to make it more equitable.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so again, thank you so much. And I can't wait to have you back on again. So stand for a minute. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you again, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We look forward to another episode. But again, hope you got a lot out of this. I can't wait to have Isabel back again. And again, if you've got a passion, you want to do something about it, find out what that is. Think about your biggest passion, which you want to change, and start linking up with people who want to do that and who can help you make that change. We may be disabled, but we can make changes. Let's go for it. Thanks again. Have a great day. Hope you enjoyed another episode of Move It or Lose It. Have a great time, guys.